If you've been wanting to get started with bees and get your own hive, you will not want to miss a moment of this presentation. We thank you very much. Please join me in welcoming Bill Gardner to the stage.
I don't know whether to say good morning or good afternoon. Kind of in between right now. I've been beekeeping for 53 years. I started at a time when my grandfather and my father, when they asked you or told you to do something, you didn't say no. You couldn't refuse. So it all started for me one morning. He walks in, I'm eating breakfast, he grabs me by the shirt collar, literally, and says, "Come on, you're going with me." I said, "Where are we going?" He said, "The bee yard." I knew what I was in for the rest of my life. So, I don't know what's going on here.
Keep it up closer to you.
Oh, okay, that better? My voice carries anyway. So, how many beekeepers are in here right now? Anybody that has bees? Okay, good. So you want to be a beekeeper? All right. Well, that's the wrong way. Come on. There we go. All right. So being a beekeeper for 53 years, it's been a 53-year-long science experiment. That's kind of how you got to look at it, because there's so much new stuff that comes out every year. There's been so much advancement in it over the years. When I first started, we didn't have what was called varroa mite or small hive beetle. The only thing we had to worry about was mice and wax moths. Those were our two biggest worries, and if you lived in the mountains, you had to worry about bears. So, if you can make the accomplishment of this science experiment for as long as I have, you should be applauding yourself. Really? All right, in the beginning, 401 years ago, the European honeybee was brought to Virginia, to Jamestown. That's where it all started for the Europeans over here, was then. It came over on the ships because they knew they needed to have the honeybee to pollinate crops at that point. They had no idea that there were wild, natural, native honeybees already here. They didn't know that because they didn't go check things out before they went somewhere. So as they come over, the Europeans, like I said, they brought Carniolas and Italians. Those are two strains of honeybees from Europe. The Carniolans are more prevalent in the UK, whereas the Italians are more prevalent in the continental Europe. The picture that's pictured up here on that stand is called a skep hive. Skep hives are no longer legal to use anywhere in the United States other than a historical depiction of beekeeping. Like Williamsburg, they use skep hives within colonial Williamsburg. They cannot harvest the honey, because to harvest honey out of a skep hive, you have to kill the bees to do it. So we don't want that to happen. Why? Apis mellifera is on the endangered species list. That is a scientific name for a honeybee. Today's equipment that you see there, that's a wooden Langstroth hive. It was invented in Europe by Dr. Langstroth. He invented a 10-frame hive. In that 10-frame hive, all of the comb or frames are removable. That is the only type of hive you can use in the United States. It has to be removable frames. Now there's different variations on this hive. The weight of a 10 frame super, because you have a brood box on the bottom, then you have your honey supers on top of the brood box, superior to the brood box. That's why they're called supers. That 10 frame box, 40 to 60 pounds of honey. Now imagine you're picking that 40 to 60 pounds up from up here, which is not unusual. So now they've come up with an 8 frame. They have nucleus hives that people get honey out of. They use long Lancaster hives. They use lay-ins hives, which are the long coffin-looking hives that you see in people's yards. Yeah, I'm going to have a yard full of coffins probably next year. Really? Did I talk too long? All right. Care of new bees. You can get new bees 2 different ways. You can get 3-pound packages, which is 3 pounds of honeybees and a queen, or you can get what is called a nucleus hive. A nucleus hive is a 5 frame box of bees. It's got comb, honey, brood, which consists of eggs, larvae, and capped brood that are ready to hatch. It has all the sustainable bees in it: drones, workers, nurse bees, mortuary bees, cleaner bees, a queen, and foragers. The different types of bees. The queen basically runs the democracy in the hive. She's large and in charge. She's the biggest bee in the hive. Okay? The drones, they are the males in the hive. There are very few drones in a hive. They're good for 2 things: mating and morale. Once they mate, they die. They only mate once in their life. A queen only mates once in her life. The morale, they make sure that the foragers are still working. And then every fall, when it starts to get cold, guess what happens to that drone bee? He gets kicked out the front door because he's just another mouth to feed. So, new drones hatch every spring. Now, I mentioned nurse bees. Nurse bees are brand new bees that just hatched. They take care of the brood, they clean the cells, they feed the queen, they become queen attendants. If a bee becomes a queen attendant, they never leave the queen. They never know what it is to fly outside unless she swarms. They never leave the hive. Mortuary bees. It is what it sounds like. They clean the hives of dead bees. They drag them to the entrance board and they throw them out. Or they fly away and they drop them. And then they come straight back to the hives. Cleaner bees clean cells, they clean the hive up in general, get the trash out of the hive, they clean the bottom board, they sweep it all out. Foragers, it is what it sounds like. Those are the bees that you see leaving the hive and coming back with pollen baskets full of honey, full of pollen, guts full of nectar, and usually they're covered with yellow pollen as well. Because a flower has a negative charge. The bee in flight creates a positive charge. When that bee gets near the flower, they're positively charged. It's like a magnet. They just collect pollen. That's how it works. All right, you have to work with the bees. You have to inspect the hives at least every other week. When you're doing these inspections, you're actually in the hives. Does this have a pointer on it? I can't hear you. can't see it on the screen. All right, never mind. But you see the good gentleman in the hive? He's a brave individual. Those are probably his bees that he's been around for years, and they know him. He's not wearing gloves, and he's not even wearing a veil. Once your bees get used to your scent, they operate on what's called pheromones. If you're upset or anxious when you go to that beehive, they're going to be all over you because they're going to try to intimidate you to leave. They don't want you in there. Okay? Just like if you eat a banana before you go in that hive, a banana is the same scent as the attack pheromone. If you go and get ready to open up a hive and you smell bananas, don't go in it because they're highly upset and they will come out of there after you. What you're looking for when you do these inspections you're looking for the general health of the bees. If you can see a varroa mite on the back of a bee, you're in trouble. Because typically the varroa mite is on the stomach of the bee, the bottom of the bee. If you see it on top, you've got a mite explosion in your hive and you have to treat immediately. The other things you're looking for is you're looking for eggs, you're looking for brood, and you're looking for capped honey to make sure that they're working. They're putting their stores away for the winter. Okay? This other side over here is a good example of what a jam-packed hive full of bees looks like. The one on the picture on the right, that hive is jam-packed full of bees. And that's what you want to see. All right. Inspections, like I said, are done bi-weekly. You see the dark part of the comb on the left? That dark comb is brood comb. The lighter color comb is where they put their stores. Brood comb is used constantly. As soon as a bee hatches out, queen lays another egg in the hole. Okay? Swarms. This is how honeybees propagate the species. It is natural for them to swarm. Honeybees do not want to sting you when they swarm. You can walk up to a swarm if you're a beekeeper and take your finger and move those bees around until you find a queen. They don't want to sting you. They're looking for a home. They're too fat and happy with honey and pollen and bee bread to really do anything but fly. When they swarm, the honeybees will starve the queen prior to the swarm. The reason they do that is because she's fat and happy. She's fed on a constant basis by her attendants. So she gets really, really fat. Okay? So they got to slim her down so she can fly. So they slim her down so she can fly, and she tells the scouts to go out and find a new home. They may send out 1,000 scouts, but what they're looking for is they're looking for a space of at least 40 liters in available open space inside of it, and at least 15 feet in the air, because they don't want to be bothered. They will find a tree to hang in. They can be there for minutes, or they can be there for 24 to 48 hours. Okay? Beekeepers know how to catch these swarms and when to go catch them. They know when to start looking for them. They know in their hives, this time of year, we're looking for swarm cells. We want to prevent that swarm. We want to provide them a fake swarm So we will do what's called splits. We will take that existing queen out of that hive, put her and brood and bees and stores and empty frames in another box and say, go to town. We will leave those swarm cells or supersedure cells in the existing hive and let them create their own queen. Or we'll introduce a new queen, which means they go through and kill all those cells. They actually chew them open, pull the larva or the formed queen out and kill it. You only have one queen per box. If you have two, got a problem. PPE and tools. Everybody know what PPE stands for? Okay. I wear a veil and gloves. I don't wear a jacket any longer. When you get stung, it's like a tattoo. That's all it is. Now, I'll say this. People overreact to bee stings. When you get stung by a bee, if you get the little red dot and a little bit of swelling right there, you are not allergic to a bee sting. That is a normal human reaction to a sting. If you are allergic to a bee sting, you will go into anaphylactic shock and die shortly later unless you get help. That means your throat closes up, you have difficulty breathing, and it happens like that. If you're allergic, you are truly allergic. Okay? So, we recommend beginning beekeepers wear a jacket, veil, and gloves. Because over time you do build up an immunity to the venom. Now, if you do get stung, don't grab that stinger and pinch it and pull it out. All you've done at that point is you've crushed that venom sac and pushed it all into your body all at one time. Take a credit card, if you've got long fingernails, and scrape it off. Just a little FYI. Typically when you take a class through a bee club or a private individual, if you're working with them, they'll teach you how to use a smoker. Smokers can be your friend as long as you don't overuse them. If you overuse them, the bees have the mentality of my house is on fire. What's going to happen? They're going to gather everything that they own, as much of it as they can, and they're going to leave. And they're going to leave quickly. So that hive that you spent $200 on, and the bee package that you spent $130 some on, or more if it was a new, it's like driving down the interstate, holding your money out the window, and seeing how long you can hold on to it. That was an analogy that was given to me yesterday in my store, because think about it, that's what it's like. Because it is a monetary commitment, and it is a time commitment when it comes to bees. When you first start, that inspection time is about an hour and a half. Over time, we can do 15 hives in about 2 hours. Because over time you learn what you're looking for, you learn how to look for it, and you learn how to look for it quick. The less time you disturb that hive is the less time that you set them back. Because every time you open that brood box, you set them back a week. Because that queen slows down. Because she's been disturbed. Her nest has been disturbed. And it's more of a chance that she's going to say, I'm done. I'm out of here. Let's go. So you got to be careful when you do that. bee brushes. They were an invention by somebody that had a good idea. Turkey feathers work much better. A lot better. Because the brushes are nylon. The bees stick to them. They get hung up in the brush. The only way to get rid of them is take that brush and flick it like that real hard. They'll come out because of the momentum of the brush. But the turkey feather, they can't get into it and they can't stick to it. They slide off. The tool on the left, on this side over here, on the right-hand side of your screen. That hive tool is the most important thing you'll ever own when it comes to working bees. You can't have too many of them. I have probably 6 or 7. And you'll lose them. You'll leave them laying inside hives. The bees will propolis them to the frames. And you'll drop them in the grass. You'll find them when you cut the grass with the mower. Or if you've got kids, they'll take them outside and dig in the dirt with them. And then you'll find them when you mow the grass. So, you want to try to keep up with them as best you can. You're going to lose them, there's no doubt. That's why you have so many. You can never have too many hive tools. I just had a thought that escaped me a few minutes ago. But gloves. Leather gloves. Some people use washing gloves, the long ones that come up to here. Some people use vinyl surgical gloves, the real heavy ones. Beginners need to use the leather gloves. The biggest deterrent to a beginner that is just starting is getting stung in the hands. It hurts. It really does. You get stung on the back of the hand, there's a lot of nerves there. There's a lot of nerves in the back of the fingers and a lot of nerves in the wrist. Use your gloves. And the other biggest thing I can stress is this. If you're going to help somebody in an apiary that's not yours and they're not your bees, have a second pair of gloves. Okay? There's a disease that's starting to make a comeback in the United States that was almost fully eradicated. It's called American foul brood. American foul brood is a spore that is brought into the hive by a bee. It could be from miles away. It could be a robber bee from somebody else's hives that may not even know they have foul brood. And they bring that spore into your hive. Or they pick it up out of a flower that's had an infected bee in it. And they bring it back. There's one way to get rid of American foul brood. And one way only. Pour gas on top of the hive, stop it up, and light it. You have to burn the hive and the bees. It's the only way to kill American foul brood. There's antibiotics. I know the state apiarist in Virginia. Burn them. That's what he's going to tell you. They will come out and test it for it. If you think you have it, you'll notice an odor in the hive. You'll notice that brood that's capped, the caps are sunken in and maybe has a little pinhole in it. Test for American foul brood. There are test kits out here to test for it. The state apiarists carry them. And if you call them, they will come and test your bees. And then they'll tell you exactly what's wrong with them. And if they tell you American foul brood, go get your gas can. The brush is used for moving bees off a frame. So you can see what's on the frame or in the frame. The tool, the hive tool, is used to open up the box. And it'll have on the bottom of it a J hook. And that is used to lift the frames up out of the box. Because bees are great glue makers. It's called propolis. And it's better than super glue. That stuff will stick to anything. And it will glue anything to anything. And if you don't have that tool, you will never get your hive open because you don't want to stand there and beat on it, number one. And it's easier to open with a hive tool because you got leverage. You can break the propolis bond. Okay? So, all right, I came back up. So that was the last slide. What can I say about beginning beekeeping? Join a club. Number one, take a class. All right. Either Penn State, if you're going to do it online, Penn State University, Cornell University. I believe Michigan University has one, and I think Georgia Tech has one. I think. Or take the local class that is taught by master beekeepers. The curriculum is put together by the state of Virginia. It's the same throughout the state. Okay? Always take a class. After you get done with that class, before you get bees, ask for a mentor. Go to his apiary. Work with his bees. Make sure it's something you want to do. It takes a special kind of person to play with stinging insects. It's like being a volunteer fireman. It takes a special kind of person to run that burning building. So make sure it's what you want to do before you do it. There's two kinds of beekeepers. There's two kinds of people in the world that have bees. There's beekeepers and bee havers. Bee havers, they get their bees, they get their hives, they put them out in the field. Oh, they're pretty. Let's go watch the bees fly in and out of the hives. They never work the bees. They never treat the bees for varroa mite. And the bees will die. Guaranteed. The next point I want to make is this. There's a lot of people that think, oh, the bees will be fine. They'll clean themselves, they'll clean the mites off themselves. No, they won't. There are hygienic bees out here, but they don't get them all. The varroa mite causes several different types of disease in the bees. Dysentery, K-wing syndrome, and colony collapse disorder. Okay? Colony collapse disorder is one where the bees have had enough and they leave. And when the ones that can't fly stay in the hive and die. K-wing disorder, they can no longer fly. They're killed and kicked out of the hive. Okay? The varroa mite is the #1 pest in the world. And until it's brought under control, it's better than it was in 1991 when they first showed up. Thank you, China. That's where they came from. We've got to get it more under control, and the only way to get them under control is to treat. We treat 4 times a year. There are treatments out here that are natural. Oxalic acid. Formic Pro is a type of acid that's found in nature. Thymol, which is a little bit stronger than Formic Pro, isn't quite natural, but it's got natural properties in it. Do not ever let anybody tell you to do an oxalic acid dribble, because all you have then are wet, mad bees that are going to die in the cold. Okay? How many people in here think a honeybee can fly in the rain? They can't. They will drown. Honeybees don't have what you have as lungs. Down their abdomen, they have holes in the side of it called spiracles. They go into a tracheal type of duct. That's how they breathe. A raindrop, a large raindrop hits a honeybee, they're going to drown. because they can't hold their breath. They're going to breathe in, and when they breathe it in, they breathe the water and they drown. So treating for mites, you have to alternate your treatments. You can't use the same treatment year-round, because it'll get to the point where the mites say, oh, well, he's not using enough of it, but yet you're using what they tell you to use as a dosage. The mites will say, oh, I can live through this. But when you rotate that treatment, they're not getting used to any one treatment. So, in with the time commitment of working the bees every other week, you have to do an alcohol wash. And the alcohol wash to test for mites is you take a quarter cup of bees and you put them in a cup with alcohol in it. You shake it. Yes, it kills 300 bees. 300 bees for the betterment of 10,000, I'll do that all day long. Okay? And then you hold it up to the light and you count the number of mites on the bottom of the jar. Because as soon as that bee dies, the mites drop off. That is the most accurate count that you can do, is an alcohol wash. Okay? Some people say, oh, you can use powdered sugar. No. It doesn't work. It does not cause the mites to fall off. That was the old way when mites first came out. I remember shaking powdered sugar, and because the bees live after that. Well, don't do it. It's not accurate.
Mite ranges, I'll get to that in a second.
What you want for a mite count is 0. That's what you're wanting to achieve, is 0 mites in your hive. And keep it that way. You want no more than 3 mites per 100 bees. And then you multiply that 3 times 100 is 300 times, say you've got 10,000 bees in your hive. 100 times what is 10,000? 1,000, right? So now you multiply that number by 1,000. That's how many mites are in the hive. Okay? So you want no more than 3. You're going for 0. And you got to put the time in to get to that 0. You know, you check every one of them. Yep. I'm due a state inspection in April because I sell bees. I sell nucleus hives. When that state inspector comes in, she's going to take a quarter cup of bees from every hive in my apiary and check them. If one fails, I fail. So I can have no more than 3. I'm shooting for 0. Any other questions? How often? Every quarter. Your annual cost for upkeep after your initial layout, treatments, glass for honey. I would urge everyone in here to use plastic foundation because wax is getting very expensive to use, and wax is the most labor-intensive type of foundation you will ever use because you're supposed to wire it into the frame. Plastic is more cost-effective. Okay? So you've got treatment, glass, sugar, or fructose, liquid fructose. Your time, I tell all of my new beekeepers, figure your time at $20 an hour. because the IRS is going to want to know how much time you put into it and what you have invested into it. Now, after your first year, say you're always recommended to start with 2 hives. After your first year, well, that following spring, guess what? It's time to split those hives. Now you got 4. Every year you should split, or if you're going to split, give those splits away. You get to a point where you don't want any more, say you get to 6, and you don't want more than 6 hives. So you still have to keep splitting those hives. Give them away. Don't sell them, because if you sell them, you got to get inspected. Although it's a return on your investment to do it, the inspections are free by the state, and they have to do them. If you're going to sell anything with comb in it, okay? They come in and do the inspections. Sell the nukes. Sell the splits. Sell the nukes. $185 a pop. Okay? Return on your investment. Selling honey. Return on your investment. Okay? You're not going to be a millionaire being a beekeeper. I can tell you that right from the start. You'll make your money back. You'll maybe break even. You're going to invest every year in these hives, because in 5 years, you got to rotate all your frames out. Or if you use plastic, every 5 years, you have to scrape all the comb off of them and let them rebuild the comb. Because over 5 year time, all the brood comb, especially, the cells get smaller, because that larva is in a sac inside of that cell, and the cell slowly shrinks over time. So just think how many, one cell, if a queen lays 1,500 eggs a day, just think how many times one cell gets used in 5 years. So it's an ongoing process. It's actually a labor of love. Once you get into keeping bees and you've been keeping them a while, it becomes a labor of love. Any other questions? Yes. All right. To collect your honey, to take honey, you take honey once a year. There's a period of the year from July 15th to the end of August called the dearth. You want to take honey before that dearth, before the dearth. Because during the dearth, the bees start to eat their stores to get through it, because there's no nectar, there's no pollen until after the end of August, and then you get autumn olive, you get goldenrod, raspberries, blackberries, and some trees for the fall. You don't want to take any fall honey. You take honey once a year. But you always have to remember, you got to leave them stores. That's when you leave them their winter stores. So if you've got a brood box here and another brood box on top of it, all right, that's a lot of mouths to feed. So I'm going to leave 3 honey supers on top of it for them to get through the winter. And by the winter, I'm their winter, not my winter, their winter. Their winter starts at the end of September. She's already starting to lay winter bees. A winter bee lives 4 to 5 months, a worker bee. Whereas during the summer, they live 60 days. From birth to death is 60 days. They work themselves to death. The winter bee doesn't work that much other than keeping the hive warm. They don't burn that much energy. So they live longer. So then along around January, on a warm day, you need to crack that hive open and check that hive for food, their stores. So to get back to your question, when you take honey, you pull the supers off, you take a blower, blow all the bees out of it, set it to the side, and then you extract it. Unless you have comb honey that you want to make comb honey, then you cut the comb out of the frame and put it in a box or in a jar. So The extraction process is it's simple. It's a radial extractor. It spins all the honey out of the combs. Once that's done, you put the combs back in a box, set them back up on top of the hives, and let them clean them up. And you might leave one empty one on top so they can put the fall stuff in. Okay? So that gives them another box for the winter. You want to leave them as much as possible for the winter. Okay? And the treatments that you use 4 times a year. Twice in the spring, once after the dearth, and once in the winter for the mites. Like I said, it's a labor of love. I mean, I've been doing it 53 years, so it's something that I enjoy doing. My wife enjoys doing it. I took her to her first bee class 5 years ago, kicking and screaming. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. Well, all of a sudden, now she's running our apiary. I'm running the store. She's running the apiary. So it's a lot to it. It's a time commitment. It's a monetary layout up front. So it's something to think about. But when it comes to country living, homesteading, prepping, just remember this. When the bees die out, when the pollinators die out, human life will make it another 4 to 5 years and we will cease to exist. Without a pollinator, you don't have grass. Without grass, you don't have cattle. Without cattle, you don't have meat. Without pollinators, you don't have vegetables. Your food supplies, your food sources are gone. California's going through it this year. Be prepared for the price of almonds to go up. You can't grow almonds without honeybees. They will not self-pollinate. They have to have the bees in the orchards. Right now, there's still about 4 foot of snow on the ground out there in the orchard. They can't get the bees in to pollinate. Right now, they're a month behind schedule. So there's a lot to beekeeping. There's a lot of commercial beekeepers in the world. There's what we call sideliners that have 5, 10 hives. And then there's the hobbyist that has 2 hives just starting out. So think about what you want to do. Just give it careful thought before you do it. Yes, ma'am. There are land use benefits depending upon where you live. We live in Shenandoah County. You have to have 1 hive of bees per acre for your contiguous acres outside of your home acreage. In other words, if you have 10 acres, they take 1 acre out for your house, and you have 9 contiguous acres. You have to have 9 hives of bees to get land use in Shenandoah County. The least you can have is 5. So yes, there are opportunities for land use with it. And it's working. Any other questions? Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. You've been a great audience. Great questions.